All my levels. Levels. There he is.
Oh, there you are. Okay. I watched a very good documentary last night.
You'll have to forgive me. I'm restoring all my levels. Somebody was up working here.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder who did that. I wonder who that could be.
I have. Geez, I no, gosh.
I wouldn't know.
I can't tell you. Yeah, all the levels are completely
knackered.
You knackered. Absolutely just
knackered. Yes.
Bollocksed up. Yep. Like properly bollocksed.
I was watching MSNBC last night. Rachel Maddow did a documentary called "From Russia with Lev."
Yeah.
About Lev Parnas. Oh my God, it was a great documentary.
Alrighty, let's
get this show on the road.
Yeah, let's do that, shall we? Let us do that. I'm going to be playing with these levels the whole show. Oh, maybe I'll start the radio first. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, that might be good.
Oh, yeah, there we are.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
But it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Cause it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
And it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you'll cast your vote for Kennedy and a change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Yes, it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy,
Welcome, welcome, welcome from my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, North American continent, Western Hemisphere, on this planet Earth, the only one. We have third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is TKE Tonight, Kennedy Effect Live. TKE Tonight. I'm getting there. My brain is not working right because I'm trying to do too many things at the same time. It's not going great. TKE Tonight live with you for the 24th of September, 2024. We are getting there, kids. The 24th of September. I mean, we're about 5-ish weeks away from the end of this election cycle. It's coming very, very quickly. Now, I'm hoping that everything is sounding well on your end. There was other work being done here in the office studio today, and a lot of my board levels are completely screwed up, and I think I've restored everything to where it should be, so hopefully everything on your end sounds lovely and wonderful. Welcome to all of you who are here yet again, loyal listeners and new listeners alike. Mike has already said that he was getting warbling and screeching. Let's hope not. I think I've solved all that. George hasn't seen or heard anything out of the ordinary quite yet, so hopefully everything's okay. I had a completely reset the board. But anyway, yeah. So hopefully everything's okay. Always drop a comment in the chat if there's something that's odd on your end. Let us know. We'll do our best to get it fixed up as best we can. Where am I? What was I thinking here? Let me see. So, where are you watching us right now? Well, here's where we are, and here's hopefully where some of the places that we are. We are live on my Facebook page right now. Jeff Kennedy. My name is right there in the bottom left hand of your screen. Always thrilled to have George here. I'm already boring him to death as he is yawning. So I've already bored poor. I've already bored poor George to death. I'm losing him.
No, I just did 12 hours of yard work. So
Jim, we're losing him. We are live on our YouTube channel. That Other Side of Information, live on our home group Facebook page for all things surrounding the program, also called That Other Side of Information. We are live on our Twitch channel right now, which is Jeff R. Kennedy, and our LinkedIn, which is Jeff Kennedy as well. We continue to do really quite well on LinkedIn, which is a very strange little thing. I never want to bore you with internet broadcasting, going down the internet broadcasting rabbit hole, but it is a bit of an odd thing. Live video is not really something for LinkedIn as such, but we seem to do pretty well there. So, as always, and I do mean as always, if you are, especially if you are new to the program, drop in a hello. Let us know where you are listening from. It would be great to know what parts of the planet that we are speaking to, and the areas that we're talking to, where you're watching, listening, all of those things. I would love to know where you're from. We continue to ask you to please be part of the program with your comments and your questions, and by sharing the program to friends, family, Facebook groups that you're in, taking the YouTube video, taking the link of that, sharing it anywhere that you can. We're very grateful for you doing that. It really does help us grow. And, we need that kind of help, to be honest with you, as a new radio station. So, speaking of new radio stations, by the way, I should have thought of that straight away. My whole beginning seems to be screwed up somehow because I've been really fooling around with the levels and so on. The audio of our program is going live around the globe via GCPR, the internet's, I don't even know if we're the newest. I bet you somebody else started in the, almost 3 months that we've been on the air now. Somebody else probably started a station somewhere along the way. But we're certainly on the newer end of things, being less than 3 months old, so to speak, or in our infancy, and I don't think that's a stretch, by the way. GCPR, I put the link in the chat. I continue and will always ask you to please check out the link. Check out our station. Check out the other hosts, the other shows, bios, show descriptions. It's all right there. Please check us out, gcpr.live, gcpr.live, Ghost Claw Productions Radio. Put any of that into a search engine and you will find us. We will take phone calls. We'll take them the old-fashioned way, but we'll take them. If you wish, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Let's get to the big stories of the day. The gentleman who was caught stalking Trump outside of his golf course has been officially charged with an assassination attempt. This is not the same thing as a murder charge. Assassination carries a bit more weight with it, but he has been officially charged. He has essentially admitted under questioning that this was an assassination attempt. He was there for 12 hours. He had a plan. He was armed. He had a bulletproof vest. He was ready to go. The irony, of course, is that this man, very much like the young shooter in Butler, Pennsylvania, this gentleman has given money to both Republicans and Democrats in the past, considers Trump a threat, and was prepared to assassinate him using a weapon that Republicans like to wear on their lapel pins, that they like to wear as a lapel pin on their suits. The irony is simply inescapable. Now, with that said, do I want to see Mr. Trump assassinated? God, no. That's not how we solve things in this country. And considering that the two men in the pictures behind me have been assassinated simply because of their own principles, even a man with as few principles, if any, as Trump, it's still not how we do things in this country. He himself has fostered this atmosphere, if you will, that every problem is solved at the end, at the barrel of a gun, and then we discuss it later, if anybody's left alive. But even with that said, we'll try to rise above it, at least on the sane side of the aisle, and say that we need to talk to each other to solve what divides us in this country. We can have arguments on this program from now until I die in this chair about tax policy, privatization, education, the environment, all of it. But we don't shoot at each other. The bombing in Lebanon continues. Our second story of the evening is by Abby Sewell and Natalie Melzer of the Associated Press. Headline: Israel bombards Hezbollah, killing a top commander while families flee southern Lebanon. Dateline: Beirut. Israel killed a top Hezbollah commander Tuesday as part of a 2-day bombing campaign that has left more than 560 people dead and prompted thousands living in southern Lebanon to seek refuge from the widening conflict. With the two sides on the brink of all-out war, Hezbollah launched dozens of rockets into Israel on Tuesday, targeting an explosives factory and sending families into bomb shelters. Families that fled southern Lebanon flocked to Beirut, and the coastal city of Sidon. And I think I'm saying that right. It's Sidon. I hope I'm saying it right. Sleeping in schools turned into shelters, as well as in cars, parks, and along the beach. Some sought to leave the country, causing a traffic jam at the border with Syria. You know you're desperate when you're trying to pile into Syria, most of which was leveled during the Syrian civil war. Netanyahu was quoted as saying that this military campaign is not going to stop. We talked to you last night about Netanyahu's desperation, if you will, to remain prime minister. Israel will not hold elections while it is at war. It simply won't. Remember, Israel is a parliamentary system, not a U.S. constitutional democracy or republic. It is a parliamentary system, meaning there are way more than two parties. Way more. The two main parties are the Likud party, which is Netanyahu, and the Labour Party, which is Likud being the ever increasingly right-wing fascist party, just like the Republicans here in the United States, and the Labour Party being the Democratic Party, a party that's actually interested in peace solutions, legislation, governing. Likud actually does not have a majority in the current parliament. They have formed coalition government with extreme right-wing religious parties that they don't just want to see Gaza overrun, they want to see Palestinians slaughtered. They want Armageddon to come because they want the Messiah to come. They want Arabs slaughtered. They don't think they're equal. They don't think they're humans. Sound familiar? Europe and America's, I shouldn't say dabbling, really, hundreds of years of it. Europe and America's dealings in slavery, or the way, if you just read the Old Testament, the way the Jews themselves were treated, that they weren't human. These very far-right religious parties in Israel don't think the Palestinians are humans. They don't think they're worthy of their own homeland, their own self-determination. And Netanyahu said today, in public, this campaign will not stop. He's going to bomb until he's either out of bullets, or the chances of him ever seeing trial go away, or he flees from Israel, or he's deposed. I don't know. He has no intentions of stopping. It's keeping him out of jail. It's keeping the money coming in. An interesting article here, written by Kareem Shayabib, and I'm probably not saying that right either. Chehayeb is the last name of the author of the article. Dateline is Beirut, again from the Associated Press. This is an interesting article. This is one I think you're going to want to look up and read for yourselves, or read a little bit of it. But given everything that is now happening in this ever-widening conflict, and boy, did I get that wrong. I never thought this would expand outside of Gaza, and here we are. What is Hezbollah? The group battling Israel and Lebanon. Again, Dateline Beirut. After almost a year of trading fire, Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah are now engaged in ferocious confrontations that threaten to turn into a full-blown war. Israel faces a more formidable foe in Hezbollah than it faced in Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Many consider the Iran-backed group the strongest paramilitary force in the region, but the group also has political and social wings with considerable power in Lebanon. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has warned Israel that his group has new weapons and capabilities, and it has published surveillance drone footage taken deep inside northern Israel that showed the port of Haifa and other sites far from the Lebanon-Israeli border. In the past few days, it has struck deeper into Israel than at any time in the past year. So, what is Hezbollah? Founded in 1982 during Lebanon's civil war, Hezbollah was initially devoted to ending Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon. It achieved that in the year 2000 following a long war of attrition that eventually forced Israel to withdraw, but it has continued its battle and seeks Israel's destruction. Shiite Muslim Hezbollah is part of a collection of Iranian-backed factions and governments known as the Axis of Resistance. It was the first group that Iran supported and used as a way to export its brand of political Islamism. In addition to being an armed group, Hezbollah is also a political party with lawmakers in the Lebanese parliament and has had representatives in most Lebanese governments for decades. It also provides extensive social services, including running schools and health clinics in southern Lebanon and other parts of the country where it has a strong presence. So Israel is not at war with the Lebanese government as such. It is at war with Hezbollah, which is actually part of the Lebanese government, but not the majority. The prime minister is not a member. It has members of parliament. And whether it is Hamas or Hezbollah, my particular opinion, and that doesn't mean it has to be your opinion, it's the same. Israel has every right to defend itself. It does not have the right to slaughter innocent people. Of the 560 reported dead in Lebanon so far, one would have to wonder how many of those are actually Hezbollah fighters. My guess, not many. In fact, we know from reading the article last night, some of them are women and children. But Israel doesn't care. And I really shouldn't even say it that way. All of Israel, we cannot just blanket speak that way about all of Israel and all of the Israeli people. The Netanyahu government doesn't care. Netanyahu just wants to stay in power. He doesn't care how many women and children, elderly, the affirmed, the disabled, the innocent. He doesn't care how many of them are killed. He simply wishes to stay in power. His popularity remains higher because even in a wartime situation, he doesn't enjoy the level of support that you would think a normal wartime president would be basking in. A substantial percentage of the Israeli population does not want this war. They want the war with Hamas to end. They want Netanyahu in jail, where he belongs. He's not stopping. He is not stopping. Because it keeps him out of jail. It keeps him free, if you will. Israel has every right in the world to defend itself. Every right. It is a globally recognized independent nation state. It has every right to maintain the integrity of its own borders. It does not get to slaughter indiscriminately. But Netanyahu doesn't care about that. He simply doesn't care. Speaking of, let's switch gears real quick and go to yet another article from Associated Press. This one is written by David Lieb and Jim Salter. They are the co-authors of this article. Headline: Missouri executes a man for the 1998 killing of a woman, despite her family's calls to spare his life. And that's only the beginning. The prosecutor, the current prosecutor overseeing this case, has stated in public that the man is innocent. Not just not guilty, but innocent. And they put him to death anyway, because we just can't kill enough black men in the center of the country. Dateline, Bonnie Terre, Missouri. And I think I'm saying that right as well. A Missouri man convicted of breaking into a woman's home and repeatedly stabbing her was executed Tuesday over the objections of the victim's family and the prosecutor, who wanted the death sentence commuted to life in prison. Marcellus Williams, 55, was convicted in the 1998 killing of Leisha Gale, who was stabbed during a burglary of her suburban St. Louis home. Williams was put to death despite questions his attorneys raised over jury selection at his trial and the handling of evidence in the case. His clemency petition focused heavily on how Gale's relatives wanted Williams' sentence commuted to life without the possibility of parole. Quote, "The family defines closure as Marcellus being allowed to live," the petition stated. "Marcellus' execution is not necessary." As Williams lay awaiting execution, he appeared to converse with a spiritual advisor seated next to him. Williams wiggled his feet underneath a white sheet that was pulled up to his neck and moved his head slightly while his spiritual advisor continued to talk. Then Williams' chest heaved about a half dozen times, and he showed no further movement. Williams' son and two attorneys watched from another room. No one was present on behalf of the victim's family. The Department of Corrections released a brief statement that Williams had written ahead of time, saying, "All praise be to Allah in every situation." Republican Missouri Governor Mike Pearson said he hoped the execution brings finality to a case that, quote, languished for decades, re-victimizing Miss Gale's family over and over again. Although didn't Miss Gale's family say they didn't want this? Boy, do state governments love killing black men. The NAACP had been among those urging Governor Parson to cancel the execution. Quote, "Tonight, Missouri lynched another innocent black man," NAAC President Derek Johnson said in a statement. It was the third time Williams faced execution. He got reprieves in 2015 and 2017, but his last-ditch efforts this time were futile. Governor Parson and the state Supreme Court rejected his appeals in quick succession Monday, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to intervene hours before he was put to death. We just love him. We just love it. We just love putting them to death. We can't put enough people to death. I am not as opposed to the death penalty as some progressives are. I don't think the death penalty is a black and white situation. No pun intended. I think some crimes are so terribly horrific. The family of the victim did not want to see this. The prosecutor in the case did not want to see this. There are serious questions that Mr. Williams was innocent. And again, not just not guilty. No one in a trial is ever found to be innocent. They are either guilty or not guilty. The prosecutor in this case has actually raised the question that Mr. Williams was innocent. Not just not guilty, but innocent. And I know this is going to sound silly. I know it's going to sound like one of those really, duh, did you really say that kind of moments? But the death penalty is permanent. Mr. Williams could spend the rest of his life in prison with no possibility of parole. And if it had been found that he was innocent or not guilty, down the road, he'd still have a chance to live. Death is irreversible. If a week from now, 12 hours from now, 12 years from now, it is found that Mr. Williams was innocent, there's no going back. He's already gone. Now, I do think there are crimes that are so incredibly horrific that the death penalty can be warranted. And I don't know the gory details of Miss Gale's death. I certainly haven't seen the crime scene pictures. I'm not here to tell you that I have. But there was genuine question here. Not just that Mr. Williams was not guilty, but that he was innocent. Are we in such a damn hurry in this society to kill everything we see? My brother is a hunter. I never had the stomach for it. And I still don't have the stomach for it. Although at this point, I don't even have the body for it. I can imagine being out in some tree stand for 6 hours, freezing my ass off, figuring out where the hell I'm going to pee. I don't have the body for it. I can barely walk some days. But if he does get something, if he does get a deer, I take the meat. And my brother, like a native indigenous person, will use every last piece of a deer. He'll even get the bones ground down into meal to give to his dogs. He uses every last bit. And if there's meat or something that he can't use, he donates it to an unsheltered shelter. So what does that have to do with anything? Because the one thing about hunting is that some of the folks who hunt seem to hunt just for the bloodlust of it. The power to take another sentient life. Whether it's a rabbit, a deer, a bear. If you go into the western states, elk, moose. They crave, they lust over the power to kill. I'm blessed and I'm very happy. My brother's not one of those folks. If he gets one in a season, it's probably more meat than he's going to need for months, and then he's done. And he doesn't have heads and antlers on the wall. But we as humans do seem to have this bloodlust. If it's breathing, we want to kill it. And that has now extended into the death penalty. Republicans who have to look tough on crime couldn't wait to kill this man. Instead of listening to the victim's family, listening to the prosecutor, and saying, wait, the last time you gave this man a reprieve, this evidence wasn't available. There's genuine new evidence here. We need to look at this. But nope. We had to hurry up and rush and kill. There is a bloodlust sometimes in this country. And I would add, if Mr. Williams, instead of being Marcellus Williams, was Frederick Smith, I tend to think we would have waited a bit. Let's get to some of your comments before I move on to the next story. And there are more stories. And I would be able to get to some of your comments if I grab the right mouse, because I think I only have 40 of them in front of me. As soon as there's more than one mouse in front of me, I'm always grabbing the wrong one. That's exactly what I was doing. So this is strange. It's just coming up as Facebook user, but I think it's Donna. I'm not sure. What a surprise. I'm not sure what's going wrong on my side. Very strange. First off, let me say hello to Becca. She is in Kansas City, Missouri, and I hate it here. Becca, honestly, please, I'm not laughing at you. It's the way you wrote it and the way it came out and the way I heard it in my head. It just struck me as funny. You know, some people can tell a joke and other people can read the very same joke and they can't tell it, they can't deliver it. It's just something about the way that words jumped off the page at me. Please, I beg you, I'm not laughing at you. It's just the comment struck me. I'm sorry. You know, I think in the past I have been very, maybe even flippant about just saying to others and just kind of thinking out loud and even thinking it myself. It's so awful here. Why am I living here? We need to move. It's time to move. If you hate where you are, pick up and move. It's the American way. Not everybody can do that. And all I would say to Becca is if you can get out, then get out. And the sad part of it is if you are a Democrat or a progressive in Missouri, you can remember a time when Missouri was a solidly blue state. It's one of the states that the Koch brothers have used their money very, very wisely. And it's one of the states that does seem to be under the control of Fox News. Missouri was a solidly blue state from the Republican Great Depression through the war and into the boom times of the 50s and 60s and early 70s. But now it is solidly red, and what a shame. It can't be easy living there. I feel the same way every time I hear from Mike. You know, being in Mississippi, I can't, or Alabama. Why am I blanking? I'm blanking. But I don't know how you do it. I have a hard enough time being in Pennsylvania sometimes, especially when the rainbow goes on the other side of the river. George knows what I'm talking about. And I look longingly to the east and think, God, it's so close. Let me see. I got the wrong mouse again. I think this is Donna. I'm not sure why it's coming up as Facebook user. I think that's Donna. So forgive me, Donna, if that's you. Here's I guess. I believe Mr. Williams was innocent. How can people claim to be pro-life and pro-death penalty at the same time? Because it's good for politics and it's good for business. You can't be both. Truly, you can't. But this is one of the miracles, and I don't use that word lightly, and I don't use it flippantly. One of the miracles that the so-called conservative movement, which is really the billionaire fascist movement, one of the real miracles that they've been able to achieve is the cobbling together of these interest groups that are actually in conflict with one another. A genuine pro-life Christian can't be pro-death penalty, and yet they are. And those two things don't go together. Poor, uneducated white folk have nothing in common with billionaires, but somehow they've been convinced that they do. They've somehow been convinced that they are temporarily inconvenienced billionaires. When no, actually, you're poor labor. You are cheap labor for the billionaires. You are consumers for the billionaires. And the instant that you cannot produce or consume, they want you dead. And that's okay. We'll find somebody else to take your place. These so-called business owners, and not just the billionaires, even some small business owners, who say they want the U.S. border shut down. Meanwhile, their kitchens are filled with a half a dozen South and Central American immigrants here illegally. But they want the border shut. They want their cheap labor, but they don't want anybody else to have any. Republicans have managed to cobble together these very disparate, strange groups who are often in conflict with each other over what they supposedly stand for. So how they can be both, they can't. But it makes for a good base for the Republicans. What else do we have? I believe this is Donna. Again, our Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, said to put him to death and they would figure it out later if he was innocent. That tells you everything you need to know. Just tells you everything you need to know. I don't even know what you say to that. Sounds very Christian to me, doesn't it? Let me see. We have seen for decades that after a state-sanctioned murder has been carried out, the state-murdered person has been proven innocent. It has happened before, and it will happen again, and it may very well happen in Mr. Williams' case. That's exactly why it's time to slow down. Again, I am not purely anti-death penalty. I'm not. I really do think there are some things that are just so incredibly horrific. A Jeffrey Dahmer type case, a Ted Kaczynski type case, Timothy McVeigh, the 9/11 bombers, although they all ended up dying. Some crimes are just that horrific. But when the victim's family, when the prosecutors themselves say, this man might very well be innocent. Not just not worthy of the death penalty, but he might very well be innocent. He may very well should not even be in jail. Seems to me that the state goes into overdrive and can't kill fast enough. This might be Becca. Thomas left Kansas State. He sure did. But then he went to Georgia. So I don't know. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Different sides of the same coin. Which is nothing I haven't said to him, by the way. It's just isn't. It's just nothing I haven't said to him. Name a paradise place to live. I'll wait. Ireland. I've been to a city in Mexico I'd move to in about 5 minutes. Yeah, Ireland sounds good to me. Happiest people on earth are in the Scandinavian and lowland countries. Now, I'm not saying that's simple. I'm saying I don't always understand it. I don't always understand how so many people of color can remain in the South, where they're hated. They're stronger people than me. I don't always comprehend what it must be like to be a member of the LGBTQ community living in the old Confederacy. Well, it still is the Confederacy. It would seem to me I would want to go somewhere where I would be more accepted. The Northeast or California. But that doesn't mean it's easy just to pick up your life and move to a completely different state. There's work, there's family, there's things to consider. I get all that. I'm simply saying I cannot always wrap my head around it. Didn't say I was right. Didn't say you should all pick your asses up and move. I know it's not that simple. I'm simply saying if you have the ability, I'm wondering sometimes why you don't. Why is Florida losing population? Because Ron DeSantis has turned it into a fascist dictatorship. They are losing people. And on top of it, they're losing skilled people. Teachers, engineers, scientists. They can't get out fast enough. You can vote with your wallet. That might very well be one way to do it. Is to move. Teach these governments something. Let me get back to the AP because there was a couple other articles I really wanted to get into. And they are not all, political, believe it or not. President Biden gave his final speech to the United Nations today. This is also from the Associated Press. Or I'll do this. Let's do this instead. Go ahead, you're on.
He's fine. Go ahead, you're on.
Can't listen in the background, folks. If you're going to call, you must listen to the phone. Period. There's a 10-second delay. You must talk to me through the phone, period. Let's try again. I have a feeling it's the same person. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Mike.
Hey, Mike.
I was just, I'm sorry to interrupt your how people live wherever they live. And, you can go the whole overarching things you talked about on the show tonight. I don't understand how people can live in Israel.
I don't understand that either.
If you're Jewish, why not move to the real Jewish homeland, which is Florida?
Yeah. It is.
People out of Florida.
Mike, we have an absolutely dreadful connection. And I will take some blame for it. My phone shows me that I have a very solid signal. Your voice is very twisted and very robotic and very science fiction-y. So please forgive me. I hope you don't think I'm trying to get rid of you. It was just a really terrible connection. And that's probably you trying again. Third strike, though. We'll see. Let's see if the third time's a charm, my friend.
I had you on speakerphone. That might be part of it.
Oh, possibly, but
Is it better now?
So far, yes. Airwaves are yours.
Oh no, I'm
all the overarching stories you cover tonight, and really anything you've covered in the past week, month, whole year, it's all about human nature. Those people, like I was saying, I don't understand how people can live in Israel, with the threat of being bombed all the time. But it's all based on the fantasy world that people can create for themselves. And it's human nature. This land was promised to them. This land was sacred. There's an old joke, Dennis Miller, who I kind of despise now, used to say, how is Israel the promised land? Did God forget he made Cabo San Lucas?
Yeah, there is that. Even from a more biblical standpoint, it's the promised land. Go enter this land. I have promised it to you. Just make sure you kill everything that's there first. But that's,
people wonder how Netanyahu is so popular. Well, he put up a thing. I saw it briefly. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it, but he showed all of the countries, the Arab countries in the Middle East that surround Israel. And Israel is like 2% of all of those landmass of countries. And the Muslims just can't stand that the Israelis exist. They want that too. And the Palestinians, they don't want them as refugees in Jordan or any other country like that.
Correct.
Why is it? People just have ancient stuff that they're pissed off about. And then my brother, was killed by the Israelis. My brother was killed by the Palestinians or by Hamas. And so those are their motivations. You ask, how can I live in Mississippi? It's a miserable place. The summers aren't recommendable because it's hot and humid. It's all over the South. But then I look up on the East Coast and people are living in New York and it's 101 degrees and 100% humidity and it doesn't seem to be any better. And when I say name a place that's better, well, I have practically all of my local women friends are all lesbians. I didn't set out to be that. I don't know that I'm particularly lesbian friendly, but those are just women I know from working or being friends with another friend. I have tons and tons and tons of liberal friends here. They're all atheists, liberal atheists like me, in a place that's crazy Jesus evangelical.
Please,
and
please don't.
I don't know that there's any place I can go where there is a liberal oasis state in the United States.
Not a whole state, no. There are liberal oases: Seattle, Austin, New York,
right? But you're still
Chicago,
in Texas.
But yeah. Well, right. Exactly.
You're surrounded by the hostility of Texas and all.
Look, there's deep red counties in New Jersey. While the county I grew up in was not deep red when I was growing up there, it has since, with the great urging and pushing and assistance of Fox, become a deep red county. There are deep red counties in New Jersey. There are deep red counties in New York State. There are deep red counties in California and Oregon and Washington. Hell, the eastern half of Oregon wants to break off and become part of Idaho. And Idaho's happy to have them, by the way, because they want the population and the tax revenue. I'm not talking about my statement. I'm begging you, I'm going to repeat it again, is not to misunderstand me or misconstrue me. I don't care where anybody lives. It's none of my business. I'm simply saying that at times I can't wrap my head around it. How people can openly live in places where you are hated for your mere existence. That you are hated because you draw breath in the same place that these other folks who hate you draw breath. It doesn't mean you should all pick up and move. I'm not that judgmental. I'm not that smart. I know it's not that easy. Some of these, families may have been living in places where they're now hated for generations. They may have come off the boat from Europe and landed exactly where they are now, and the family never left. I understand all that. All I'm saying is sometimes I don't get it because I didn't grow up that way. I can't wrap my head around it. I can't tell you.
But you're living in Pennsylvania, which is this battleground state where it's half, just Trump crazy.
Oh, it's house by house,
balanced out by liberals. Right?
It's house by house. If there, this wouldn't be so simple. If the United States was to splinter into pieces again, Pennsylvania would splinter into a million pieces. It would be neighborhood by neighborhood.
Right, it'd be the house across the street. There's somewhere on your block. I've seen you live in a suburb. There's probably Trump signs in the yard and Harris signs in the other yard. These people hate each other with every fiber of their being. So it's just sort of amusing, that idea. I couldn't imagine living up in Pennsylvania, but then I think it's probably not all that different from living in Mississippi or living in Los Angeles or living in New Orleans or all the other places I've traveled in America and around the world.
I would say
it's just people staring at you. They don't like the cut of your jib.
I would say this summer it was very much like living in Mississippi. We had about a 6-week stretch where it was 100 degrees, and if it wasn't literally 100 degrees, it sure as hell felt that way. So yeah, it was similar. But as far as any sort of blue paradise island, there isn't one, and I know that there isn't one, but I can tell you I was happier, felt safer, and more secure in New Jersey. And I don't mean from crime, I just meant that if hard times found me, and they did more than once, that I would get through it a hell of a lot easier across the river on the Jersey side of the river than on this side of the river. And if I could move back to New Jersey, I would. That's all I'm saying. Again, it's not about me being morally superior or being smarter than anybody else. It's not that. It's not that at all. I'm looking at certain personal histories and lifestyles that I can't identify with. I don't know what it is to grow up to be a black man and the descendant of slaves in Alabama, because I'm not one. So I don't fully understand that, and I never will. And so it comes partly from my own lack of understanding and lack of being able to fully grasp that, other than what those folks are welcome or willing enough to tell me, that I can't fully grasp it. Therefore, I can't grasp it. So it would seem to me that the simple answer, boy, how do you live somewhere where they hate you so much? But that doesn't mean you can just pick up and take off to some other part of the country. I get it. I get that. Just sometimes it's hard to wrap my head around. Because I'm a human being.
All of my adult male black friends would tell you, I have one friend who was a loss prevention manager at one of the stores I worked at. He makes 6 figures, works for a potato chip company here in Mississippi. And he's living large. I mean, he has family in Chicago, and he wouldn't live in Chicago again for any amount of money. He's lives right up the road here in Philadelphia, Mississippi, and is probably more successful than 8 out of 10 white people in Mississippi. And I know I have tons of black friends like that. He's got a family. He's got like one kid in college, one about to go to college, one's playing Little League football. Your imagination about different places a lot of times comes from movies or extreme violence that happens, or a story like that. But having traveled around, I could drive you through a neighborhood and say, "Where are you? Are we in Pasadena, California? Are we, does this look like a neighborhood there in Pennsylvania, or are we in Mississippi? And you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But people have wildly different perceptions. We aren't really a United States. We're not even friends with our neighbors across the street. But that's the reality around the world. Whether you live in Russia, or you live in China, or you live in Lebanon or Israel or wherever, these people just have crazy ideas.
Fair enough, Mike.
But anyway, I think it's time we were off the air. It's like at the top of the hour.
If I'm remembering correctly, it's Tuesday, isn't it? God, I don't even know what day it is. No,
unless there's nobody on after.
No, there's nobody on after us. We're gonna bleed over here for a few more minutes because there's a couple stories I wanted to get to real quick. But so you're good. But thank you for being part as always, and thank you for listening. And I just appreciate it. It does mean a lot to me, truly.
Oh, you just kind of got to look beyond these little stories. I mean, I read these AP stories and my eyes glaze over. I just keep clicking around and kind of get a sense of it. They're going to execute that guy. Was he already executed, or was he going to be executed
earlier
tonight?
today? Nope, he was earlier today.
People just have a bloodlust. I keep wondering if after the election or leading up to it, we're going to be fighting like in America from state to state, like Hamas and Israel. I mean, I think these people are charged for something to happen, just to break the monotony and to satisfy the hate that they have. So, could it happen here? Yes, it could happen here. It's already kind of had some stirrings of it. I don't know what's going to happen. I encourage people to watch that movie Civil War. Nobody will take me up on it.
No, I did watch it, and I was profoundly disappointed by it. It's 2 hours of my life I'm not getting back because respectfully, the movie itself tried to be entirely too neutral.
Yeah, that's one thing.
It never actually explains why this second Civil War took place. Then, of course, you have the alliance between California and Texas, which wouldn't happen
ridiculous.
Which wouldn't happen on this earth if Texas paid California. If
you notice at the beginning of that movie, that president, wonderfully played by Nick Offerman, is entering his third term as president. He's dissolved the FBI, and he's doing outrageous kind of things that guys like Trump dream of.
And his makeup is made to look himself a lot like Reagan as well. And I don't think that was by accident. But it doesn't. The movie itself doesn't really quite explain why all of this is taking place. And my humble opinion is,
but the reality on the ground there. The wonderful, I can't ever remember his name, Jesse Plemons. Most people know him as Meth Damon from Breaking Bad and other things, where he always plays a bad guy. He's out there, with the journalist with guns on him going, what kind of American are you?
Yep.
And the rednecks in the gas station, I suppose that's supposed to be Pennsylvania or someplace they're going through, because they leave from New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognize those guys. Those guys are not sitting there with guns outside of places like that, but they're just staring at everybody, which is car drives up, out-of-state tags. They're just pure hatred for that. So to me, what got me was that kind of hatred. I think that's, despite the, trying not to be partisan, it really is a very partisan, liberal, slanted movie against that gun violence culture we have in America. But I think that's the kind of hatred that's simmering below the surface that you could have another civil war on, or at least sporadic unrest, whether Trump wins or loses. Anyway, I feel we're living in a calm before the storm. I hope I'm wrong, but but the whole world is just, you can't find anybody that's happy anywhere, I don't think. And it's kind of really weird because we grew up in the, Duck and Cover. I actually remember seeing that movie. I'm old enough to remember the Duck and Cover played in junior high. And we lived under thermonuclear war, the threat of thermonuclear war. Was Reagan going to start it? When I was in college, we didn't know. But that wasn't the kind of hatred, neighbor against neighbor. This partisanship has gotten into an extreme, and I don't know who you could elect from anybody, even Kamala, that would is ever going to solve that in the short term. So, like I say, it's human nature. People are very religious. They're very partisan. They've got all these news channels and the internet feeding them confirmation bias. If you want to believe that, I don't know, Kamala Harris is a space alien, I bet that there's tabloids and websites that'll confirm that for you and run stories like that. The disinformation in the greatest information age we've ever had, with access to any information, is ironically hilarious. So, I don't know. But anyway, when you talk about can't figure out why somebody lives somewhere, where the paradise is, tell me, I'll go. We'll all have a commune or something and sing Kumbaya.
I'm a big fan of art.
But yeah, America just doesn't see itself anymore as a very united country. Well, those people up there that live up north, those Yankees, and then those people are like those Southerners, they're crazy and ignorant. The West Coast, they're all stoned and weird. There's just that bias that goes everywhere. And I found it funny when I lived in L.A. I don't know that I sound like a New Yorker, but everybody, when I lived in Los Angeles, was convinced, where are you from? And they always said, you sound like you're from New York. Do I? I don't think I do.
Yeah, I don't get that one. Respectfully, I don't get that one.
But, when they find out, if I told them I was from Mississippi, that was like being from South Africa in those days and apartheid. But if I told them I was from New Orleans, where I was actually born and lived for a long time, they don't know what that is. And you tell them, Mardi Gras, the French Quarter, and they were like, oh, that sounds great, right? But it's, an hour and a half's drive from my front door here. So, people just have biases like that, and they're not listening to what you say. They're just kind of, what do you do for a living? Where are you from? And then all those biases come piling on. But like I say, I have a lot of, black friends, lesbian and gay friends, and I'm just a plain old, my childhood was Opie Taylor-esque. Like I grew up in Mayberry, and I've never seen a Klansman in real life here. But then again, Miss America from 1984 was from here in Meridian, Mississippi. Susan Aiken, Miss America, 1984, and everybody here knew that her dad was the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan for Central Mississippi. Wrap your brain around that. So I've seen it, I don't remember that ever being mentioned on the national news. Nobody ever, had an expose on her shocking background. I don't know what ever became of Susan Aiken. But I met her, my girlfriend at the time had been Miss Vicksburg over on the west side of the state. And she was the third runner-up behind behind Susan Aiken that year in the Mississippi contest. And I just thought it was hilarious. And I explained this to her, and she was like, what? Huh? She seems so nice. And she probably was. But, if you knew more about the people or guilt by association or guilt by where they live geographically. People probably could assume in California, if I said I was from Mississippi, that all of my family was in the Klan or something like that. Not the case at all. So you go state by state and you find out that those people have biases against the rest of America. And sometimes they're silly, sometimes they're misinformed, sometimes they're just from watching movies. I'll tell you, I've never seen a movie set in the South where anybody had anything approaching an actual Southern accent. It wasn't a laugh. But films aren't reality.
All right,
I feel like I'm rambling.
But it's all right.
Catch up everything else you need.
Part of what the show's about. I'm just thrilled that you're here. It means a lot to us that you're here each night. I appreciate it.
I wish more people would call in and tell us about where they are and how it's going for them.
Well, I can tell you that I talk an awful lot on this program about what a fan I am of Tom Hartman, and it would be easy to do this job as a full-time job if I had his level of callers. Hell, I think if I had half of them, I think I'd be very well off. If I actually had to get to the end of a program and say, to all the people I didn't get to yet today on the phone, my apologies. If I ever get to that point, then you'll know we've made it. But thank you very much for being part, as always. I appreciate it.
Have a good night, man.
All right, take care. There's just a couple other stories I want to try to get to real quick. President Biden gave a farewell speech today to the United Nations. This is an article from the AP written by Amir Madhani, Matthew Lee, and Zeke Miller. President Joe Biden declared in his final address to the United Nations General Assembly, and I'm going to lose the screen. Just 1 second. That's probably Randall. Just give me 1 second to read this very quickly because I started it, so I got to finish it. President Joe Biden declared in his final address to the UN General Assembly on Tuesday that the U.S. must not retreat from the world as Israel and Hezbollah militants in Lebanon edged toward all-out war, and Israel's bloody operation against Hamas in Gaza neared the one-year mark. Biden used his wide-ranging address to speak to a need to end the Middle East conflict and the 17-month-old civil war in Sudan, and highlight U.S. Western allies' support for Kyiv since Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. He also raised concern over artificial intelligence and its potential to be used for repression. We've already seen, by the way, artificial intelligence being used in this campaign to create fake videos, to create fake voices, and so on and so on. His appearance before the international body offered Biden one of his last high-profile opportunities as president to make the case to keep up robust support for Ukraine, which could be in doubt if Donald Trump defeats Kamala Harris in November. Biden insisted that despite global conflicts, he remains hopeful for the future. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, Jack, it's Randall.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm in a total conflict over what's going on in the Middle East. But before I get to that, I am 1,000% still in support of the freedom of the Ukrainian people because they were invaded by Russia.
Yep, they were invaded. They did not start this. They were invaded.
Did not, and you have made the point many times, and I, as an historian, know exactly what you have talked about. If Putin takes Ukraine, who's next? Is it the Baltic states? Is it Poland? Does it go further? And I absolutely 1,000% believe that if he does conquer Ukraine, he will go for the European continent and European states. And he'll do puppets in, like, right-wing puppets like
and hungry. Yeah. But anyway, back to the Middle East. I've been conflicted over this. I absolutely agree with you. Israel has the right to exist. They're people. But on the other hand, Palestinians have the right to self-determination. I went to college in the early 70s with a little bitty, tiny college with only had 336 students at the time when I was a freshman. And yet we represented 34 countries, 48 states of Americans at that little college outside of Asheville, North Carolina. And yeah, my first semester roommate was Chinese from Hong Kong. And both his parents were professors at Hong Kong University. They were the British system of testing. You don't get tested during the year. You get one final test at the end of the year. He couldn't make it to get into Hong Kong College. So he came to Warren Wilson College. He graduated straight A in math. He went on, got his master's PhD in math. Yeah. I had my real first exposure, personal exposure, to fellow Black Americans from the South, whether from Appalachia or whether from the Deep South, all part of the Confederacy. And yeah, I had many, many talks the 4 years I was there with my Black sisters and brothers on the state of America at that time, and which is still the state of America today, I'm sorry to say. But getting back to best place to live, absolutely. All the Scandinavian countries are the best place to live. They're the happiest people. They have the highest standard of living, have the best health. And yes, taxes are high because the government pays for those unbelievably great services for their people. And yeah, I've got an American. I got a son of one of my daughter's godfathers who moved to Norway. Now, he moved to Denmark. Excuse me. Marry a gal from there. Well, what's the word I'm looking for? They have split. Cool. That's what I'm going to say. And they still support each other. But yeah, he's got his master's from University of London. He's over there working and creating music over there on the side, and just loving life and those northern European countries that again show promise. Now here in PA, I'm down here in the southeast, Delaware County, next to Philadelphia County. Yeah, there's pockets. The township next door to me that I grew up in is absolutely Trump land. I drive through there to go to my credit union. I go through there to drive to my one daughter's home in another township, and there's nothing but Trump flags. And I grew up there, and I know how racist it is. I know exactly how racist it is. And when Andrew and I, after 22 years, have to move north to Middletown Township, we didn't find that. We, when I was, back in, it was probably 1990, a Democratic committee in my ward in Aston. And we voted at the high school. And the last classroom to the parking lot. And there was like one of the first black students in a public school system, keep that in mind, that had his locker on that wing of the high school that we voted in. And all I heard all day was the N-word. As people were coming in, I was giving out literature and greeting people. He would go change class, go to his locker, change books, grab his lunch to go to the cafeteria. It was just the N-word like hundreds of times a day. So, yeah, there's places in Pennsylvania that to this day are still racist. But I wasn't raised that way in my Christian family. And that's why I went to Warren Wilson College. One of the reasons, because it was diverse, had a completely diverse student body, and it was the best thing that ever happened in my life. Yeah, one of the best, if not the best thing. No, the best thing was me marrying my wife, but that much
nice. You better fix that. You better fix that statement.
It was close up there. I'm living now in Brookhaven Borough, south of Middletown Township, Delaware County, west of Ashton Township, Delaware County. And it's a completely different community than me growing up in Ashton next door. Brookhaven became an incorporated borough here in Pennsylvania in 1945, right after the war. And a lot of second generation American Jews from survivors of the Holocaust moved from New York City to Brookhaven. So I would, when I was in high school, again, a public high school that was formed to be strictly white, I went to school with a lot of American Jews from this place, Brookhaven Borough, Delaware County, PA. And some of my best friends then and to this day are American Jews. And there was no hate that I ever saw in high school in the late 60s. There was no hate against, anybody. The majority of my neighborhood was, number one, Irish, number two, Italian, and number three, Polish. All Catholic. I was the Christian Protestant, extreme minority in my neighborhood growing up. And yeah, I wasn't raised to condemn Catholics. Catholics weren't raised to condemn me, And at that time, one of the closest friends in my neighborhood, that was in '67. The oldest brother was killed in Vietnam, '67. So they became a Gold Star family. And, I ran track with the next youngest son in high school. I dated the next youngest sister. There was no problem with my family, dating a Catholic or any of that BS. So, yeah, America at that time, actually, in a lot of situations, was more accepting than it is today. Mike was mentioning, neighbors. Yeah, I got my Harris sign up. I got my signs up for U.S. Congresswoman to be reelected, and my sign up for my state Democratic representative to be reelected in my yard. And he's got, the giant Trump 24 flag draped from his house. Like, do I fear my neighbor? No, I don't fear my neighbor. Am I concerned about a civil war? No, I'm not concerned about civil war. I obviously am concerned about civil unrest if the other side doesn't win. But am I fearful? No, I'm not. And the last thing I want to say, I'm going back again to the initial Israeli-Hamas Gaza incident. I went to college with an older student for his undergrad. He was 31 years old. He grew up in a tent encampment from 1948 on in Gaza. And he hated the Israelis to the point he was a colonel in the PLO. Now, going back in history, the PLO made peace with Israel. They wanted self-determination. I'm sure a heck of a lot of people, including that former classmate, just absolutely hated Israel. But it was not the point. The PLO was not the extreme poison that Hamas is. It's not the extreme poison that the Muslim faction is in southern Lebanon. And again, my brother-in-law, who has been for many, many, many years a naturalized U.S. citizen from Lebanon. His mother lives in Beirut. She refuses to leave. And my brother-in-law and his brother left. They left Lebanon. They first went, I think, for each 7 years to Germany before they were allowed to immigrate to USA and become, naturalized citizens here. But all his uncles, his aunts, his cousins, and all the other relatives, they're all in Beirut because they're the minority, the Christian Lebanese. I had a friend in college, Sophie, who was from Beirut. And she was better off economically than most Americans that went to one Muslim college, and obviously most Asians and South Americans and Africans that went there. She was able to go home in the summer. Have an airplane to and from. And just before the Civil War broke out, she's walking up the steps with two other female Christian Lebanese, up the steps to go into American University. And it did not happen to her, thank God. But one of her friends was stabbed to death, and the other was really wounded by a knife by the sect of Islam that Hamas is. You know, the two sects in the Middle East, the two branches of Islam, have been fighting since day one. You know, and that's that 10-year war between Iran and Iraq. They killed over 1 million people. It was trench warfare. Yeah, that was a fight between the two religious sects. It just reminds me of from history, the hundreds of years war, including the 100 Years' War, that occurred in Europe between Protestants and Catholics. You know what I mean?
The history of the region, unfortunately, can be traced back. I don't know how far you trace it back. And I think that's part of the problem with it. Particularly, religious Jews will tell you that Israel is land promised to them by God. Except there was already a culture and society of people already living there. God said you can have the land, you just have to slaughter everyone that lives there first. So it depends, I guess, on how far back you want to go. But I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate the comments, and we are already a half hour over.
All right, then I'm going to let you go.
We will be back again tomorrow. We'll pick it up where we left off.
You got it, brother.
All right, you have a
Good
great night. There's just one other little story that I wanted to get to, and it's a science story, and I think it's a neat story. Obviously, we do a tremendous amount of politics here. We've probably done way more foreign policy this week than we've done probably in months, especially given the fact that we're in a very intense election season. Let's take a step back from the brink here for a sec, and I just want to read you this little article. It's a science story. I fancy myself quite... I originally wanted to go to college to be an astronomer. I love space. I love the stars. I love the motions of the planets. I think it is very, very mentally cleansing. Sometimes when you're having a rough day, if you're depressed, if your mind is just completely clouded with thoughts, to go outside and look up at the stars and see the planets and see how the planets move from night to night to night, and how the constellations move and how the planets move across the constellations. When you can see the International Space Station going across it, I just find all of it very fascinating. And this is, I think, interesting as well. Now, this particular article is from yesterday. It's from yesterday. It was posted at about 2:30 in the afternoon. This is from Business Insider, and it is authored by Morgan McFall Johnson. And again, you just Google this and you'll find it, or search engine of your choice. Earth is about to pluck a second moon from an asteroid belt, but we only get the mini moon for 57 days. It's an asteroid about the size of a school bus at 35 feet long, and it has a typical unsassy asteroid name, 2024 PT5. Earth is poised to pick up this hitchhiker from the nearby Awana asteroid belt on September 29th. According to a paper published in the research notes of the American Astronomical Society this month, the 2024 PT5 asteroid will then be in the grasp of Earth's gravity, following a horseshoe-like path around our planet until November 25th, when it will return to an orbit around the sun. And there is a picture of said asteroid in this article. Quote, "You may say that if a true satellite is like a customer buying goods inside a store, objects like 2024 PT5 are window shoppers," Carlos de la Fuente Marcos, the paper's lead author, told Space.com. The asteroid poses no threat to Earth. This mini-moon is nothing like our real moon. It's super mini. Forget about spotting it with your naked eye or even a pair of binoculars. In fact, according to Dan Bartlett, an astrophotographer in California, asteroid 2024 PT5 is so faint that it's, quote, well beyond the limits of most of the best amateur telescopes. That's not going to stop them from trying. It's just a neat thing. We're actually going to have a second moon for almost 2 months until this little rock then returns to where it came from. It's just kind of neat. One thing that I think we tend to forget about is that we are, as big as the issues are that we talk about on this program and that we deal with in our daily lives, from the small things like what to have for breakfast, what to wear to work, all the way to how do we feed the kids, how do we pay the bills this month, up to who do we vote for. We are a very, very small thing in a very, very, very large universe. Very small. Exceptionally small. I think I've described this to you before, that in the original Cosmos series from 1980, Carl Sagan broke down the history of the universe to a calendar year, meaning that on the first second of January 1st was the Big Bang. And on the last second of the last day, December 31st, 11:59:59:59 is all of human history. The last second, in fact, even part of a second, is just human history. And it is a very powerful thing to go outside. Trust me, I know it sounds a little silly, maybe even when your head is really, really clear, or, sorry, I did that backward. I guess my head's not so clear. When your head is really, really jammed with thoughts, like really overrun, you just can't clear your brain. You can't sleep, you can't concentrate, you really get yourself ruminating about a million different things. Go outside. Stare up at the stars. Use, my favorite app happens to be Sky Guide, but there's many apps that do the same thing. They'll use the GPS locator on your phone. You hold it up and it'll tell you exactly what you're looking at. What stars, constellations, where the ISS is, what planets you're looking at. And you can even do a fun thing and point it down into the ground and see what the Australians are looking at. And it is a very mind clearing sort of thing to realize that we're just one celestial body in motion around one very ordinary sun in a pretty ordinary solar system on the outskirts of one pretty average galaxy in a universe filled with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of galaxies. We're just one tiny, tiny, tiny part of it. And then all of these bodies are in motion, and we're just one of them. So for almost 2 months, we'll have a second moon. It'll be kind of cool. And again, as the gentleman says in the article, you won't be able to see it, but you can be sure that NASA will be taking plenty of pictures of it. Amateur astronomers will try to take pictures of it. We'll be able to see it. We'll be able to track it and follow it. It's just kind of a neat thing. A space rock is floating by. It gets caught in Earth's atmosphere because the orbit around the Earth is going to be so strange, it eventually will be thrown back out and into a more stable, normal orbit. It's just a neat kind of thing. We went a whole 40 minutes over. Our plan is to be back with you tomorrow night. Thursday is surgery day. I have no idea how I'm going to feel. So we will plan to be back here. We'll reconvene again tomorrow from 8 p.m. T. Nathan comes up on GCPR Live and all of the GCPR video outlets as well. About an hour and 20 minutes from now at 11 p.m. Eastern. Sound of Coffee with Thomas returns tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. I will see you tomorrow evening. Until then, please take care of yourselves and each other.